Newark and Port of New York, New Jersey. We're pleased to be here this morning to discuss the pending passage of Creating Helpful Incentives to Produce Semiconductors for America Act, thankfully known as the CHIPS for America Act. And it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our State Senator Bob Menendez. Sir?
Well, thank you, Beth, and thank you for your leadership here at the port. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back at Port Newark with Director Rooney, with business leaders like John Kennedy and Bill Foley, as well as Ray Sardeno, the Senior Vice President of the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, and others, to discuss a critical piece of legislation that is on the verge of passing in the Senate, the CHIPS for America Act. Now, some of you may be asking why Port Newark to discuss this legislation. What does a bill about CHIPS have to do with ships? The answer is simple. It's supply chains. Amid containers going in and out of our state and our country, we're here to talk about the supply chain vulnerabilities that were laid bare by the COVID pandemic. For the past 2 years, there have been shortages, which is a key contributor to the rise in prices that have affected many families in America. If there was one image to sum it up, it's the photo of that container ship blocking the Suez Canal, one that disrupted international commerce and the lifeblood of industries around the world. Ships were rerouted, causing chaos and delays, all because there was a massive floating roadblock in one of the busiest sea lanes on Earth. In one visceral image, we just saw how interconnected the global economy is and how dependent we are from other countries when it comes to basic goods and services we once took for granted. Now, COVID didn't cause the ship to run aground. The chaos that resulted is emblematic, however, of the disruptions we have seen as a result of the pandemic. Surges in different countries have not only taken a tragic toll on communities around the globe, they have slowed production and the flow of goods that we all depend on. And that has increased prices. In short, we saw how much something happening halfway around the world can affect us here at home. More recently, we have seen the loss of Russian gas as a result of the war in Ukraine, 20 million tons of grain and agricultural products sitting in silos in Ukraine instead of getting to the global market has affected fuel prices, and American families have had to bear the costs. So that's why the CHIPS Act is an essential step towards strengthening our supply chain and making investments in the United States that will help us better withstand any future disruption. Over the last several years, we've seen domestic manufacturing, particularly in the field of semiconductors and microchips, shift overseas. In the 1990s, we used to produce nearly 40% of all of those microchips here in the United States. Today, that just stands at around 12%. And in large part, this decline can be attributed to dominate a critical industry. Now, I know that most people, especially before the pandemic, wouldn't have paid much attention to news about microchip shortages. But as we all learned the hard way, microchips are in practically everything we depend on, from our cell phones to our washing machines, refrigerators, to cars and defense systems, just to mention a few. And when we see a chip shortage, we see parking lots full of brand new vehicles, cars ready to be sold, but they can't roll off the lot because they don't have a microchip the size of your fingernail. And with economic indicators suggesting that rising car prices are responsible for as much as a third of domestic inflation, improving our ability to produce and manufacture chips domestically has a direct link to reducing long-term inflation costs. Shortages like the one we now see grind industries and businesses to a halt, leaving our adversaries like China with a left. It's a simple law of economics. When production plummets and the supply of goods is reduced, prices go up. That's why I'm thrilled that the CHIPS Act dedicates roughly $52 billion to shoring up our domestic semiconductor industry. Through these grants, tax credits, and other incentives, this legislation will help bring online new chip-making plants here in the United States, crucial to our economic future and national security. These investments in science and research will create good-paying jobs across industries all over the nation, and these investments will make us more competitive around the globe. But of all the benefits that's included in the CHIPS Act, there's one I'm especially proud to have offered and fought for. My bipartisan, bicameral Manufacturing Extension Partnership, or MEP Supply Chain Database Act. John Kennedy is here representing NJMEP, can tell you more about the incredible work that they do. But essentially what this bill, we wanted to scale the success we found in New Jersey to the national level. When the pandemic hit, it quickly exposed deep vulnerabilities in our own supply chains. New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program was an indispensable resource for our manufacturers. Whether it was helping legacy manufacturers retool their operations for new products or connecting startups to supply chain partners, New Jersey MEP made a real difference in keeping businesses afloat. And when we sat down to discuss how we stay ahead of the curve so that we don't live through something like this again, John noted how the United States lacked any sort of nationwide supply chain database. As a nation, we are essentially in the dark when it comes to real-time information about American manufacturers' capabilities and their inventories. From that conversation, our National MEP Supply Chain Database Act was born. Once enacted, this database will help prevent future supply chain disruptions. It will generate benefits for consumers and families, for the manufacturing industry, and most of all, for our national economy as a whole. It will provide manufacturers the information they need to make decisions on the fly, meeting the demand for products such as defense supplies, food, and medical devices. Now, one other word about the CHIPS Act. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that some parts of this legislation in the course of its negotiation leaves out some key provisions to confront China. They included some that we passed last year, like my bipartisan Strategic Competition Act. Simply put, it should not be a substitute for a comprehensive China strategy, and we're going to continue to work at this conference to make that part of it happen. But that said, the CHIPS Act is a good bill, a compromise that tackles a number of concerns that businesses, groups, and government agencies have shared for months, if not years. Through the legislation, we address vulnerabilities in our supply chains, we boost our domestic manufacturing capacity, and we better prepare our nation's economy for the 21st century. We take concrete actions to iron out the kinks in the supply chain that increase costs on American families. That makes our economy stronger and more resilient here at home, especially when it comes to the emerging technologies that are increasingly defining the 21st century, crucial both for our security and our prosperity. At a time when some doubt that Washington can get things done, the CHIPS Act is a major step forward. Finally, I want to make one thing clear since we're here at the point. This is important, but I have fought for since I became a congressman in 1993. I represented the point then in my district. I represented it in the United States Senate. Bolstering domestic manufacturing isn't about taking business away from our ports. Rather, it's about diversifying our supply chains to make them more resilient and secure. In fact, the Port of New York and New Jersey is as busy as ever, moving records amount of cargo in recent months and cementing its status as the busiest port on the East Coast, if not one of the busiest in the entire nation. In Washington and here at the port, we're continuing to prioritize investments that will facilitate the efficient flow of goods. Investments to improve safety and efficiency, like a project to further deepen the channel leading into the port of New York and New Jersey. Combined with these upgrades and other measures being taken by the Port Authority, the CHIPS Act is a crucial piece of the puzzle towards alleviating supply chain woes. The less supply chain problems we have, the more we can control costs. And most of all, though, is a sign that as we work towards bringing our economy back, toward addressing the economic challenges we face, we are delivering solutions to help families and businesses in New Jersey and all across the nation. I'll end with this. Just last week, we celebrated 53 years since Neil Armstrong first walked on the moon. I remember watching it live, glued to the TV as he took that one small step for a man. That moment, the image of the American flag on the moon is seared in our country's conscience. It's the most poignant example of what we can accomplish together as one nation, as one people. Threats to our supply chains affect every American, Democrat, Republican, Independent. But passing one bill is not a silver bullet solution. Frankly, there are no silver bullets here. But we can come together to talk about a bipartisan piece of legislation with leaders in the space who are working to unleash our greatest economic potential. And I have no doubt we can continue to come together to deliver solutions. So I want to thank you all. Before I turn it over to John Kennedy to say a few words on behalf of New Jersey MEP, I understand that our friends from Telemundo is here. Univision? I'm sorry. God forbid the competition. So just let me say a few words to explain what we're doing here, and then I'll turn it over to John. Estamos aquí hoy en el puerto de Nueva York y New Jersey para anunciar una nueva ley que esperamos que se pase en el Congreso esta semana, que es una ley para crear microchips, circuitos integrados, material semiconductor para acelerar el progreso que tenemos en todo lo que tenemos. Si manejamos un carro, tiene un microchip. Si tenemos un teléfono, tiene un microchip. Si tenemos la lavadora, tenemos el refrigerador, todo tiene un microchip. Cuando no se pueden producir microchips, porque existen en otras partes del mundo, pero no aquí, no se puede mover ese carro al mercado. Quiere decir que el costo del carro es más alto. Cuando no tenemos un microchip para el refrigerador es más caro. En fin, todo es más caro. Y una de las cosas que estamos haciendo en esta ley, parte de lo que yo fui autor, es de crear una cadena nacional de los productos necesarios para que no tenemos aumentos en precio por falta de tener acceso a esos productos, que es una de las realidades que hemos visto de la pandemia. Así que esta ley, que va a poner más de 50 millones de dólares para crear domésticamente esos microchips y resolver el problema de la cadena logística para que los precios no suben, es parte de lo que estamos hablando hoy para ayudar a las familias con los costos de lo que existe y de la inflación en general. With that, let me introduce NJ MEP CEO John Kennedy, who was the genesis of giving me this idea, which is now shortly going to become law. John.
I grew up with a Polish mom, so I'm going to speak Polish for now. I'm only kidding. But the reality is that when you look at this stuff, all my career in New Jersey in manufacturing, owning manufacturing and engineering companies, it's all been about supply chain. But the last couple of years, we decided that that's important. Everybody decided it's important. The problem with that is that you can't always get what you need because we don't know what happens. We don't know what's in our supply chain. NJMEP, we've been around for almost 30 years in this state. I've been with them 10 years. And we do have a great database of over 10,000 manufacturers. The problem with that is that it doesn't communicate with other states. It doesn't go deep enough. So conversations with the senator in this topic started 5-6 years ago. we built upon it. We could never get any motivation behind it, but COVID certainly did that. I'll give you a quick example. When COVID started, I would have bet you any amount of money that New Jersey did not manufacture any PPE. We found out that 286 companies in New Jersey did some type of PPE manufacturing. So even our excellent database was not complete enough. The funding that will support this throughout the country, led by the MEP National Network, is critical to understanding this. DOD, we're still flying B-52s from 70 years ago. Medical devices that we don't know where we are. Pharmaceutical. I read in the Wall Street Journal that 95% of our blood pressure medicine comes from China, and 50% of us adults are on blood pressure medicine. Luckily, I'm not. My wife says that I'm a carrier, so it's just a situation I have to deal with her. But all joking aside, that's not a joke. We've got to figure this out. We've got to find our gaps, and we've got to do something about it. I'm thankful that the senator was willing to listen to this dumb engineer and try to push something forward, and has never varied from that effort over the last 5 years. So thank you for having me, thank you for listening, and thank you, Senator.
Thank you, John. Next up is Bill Foley, the president of the American Microsemiconductor.
Thank you, Senator Menendez and John, for inviting me here today. The CHIP Act allows American semiconductor manufacturers to maintain leadership in technology while reducing dependence and vulnerability on foreign suppliers. The 21st century will be driven by innovation and technology in advanced semiconductor production and cutting-edge assembly technologies. The use of materials like silicon carbide will reduce power consumption and use energy more efficiently. However, these technologies come at a great cost. Similar technologies are equally capital intensive. The CHIPS Act can reduce American dependence on materials and equipment from foreign companies. From these capabilities, we will be able to shore up production gaps that have occurred over many years. These gaps have led to rising production material costs, which delay deliveries. We have all seen it, and no one is immune from these price changes. New Jersey has had a rich history of manufacturing. What trend makes, the world takes. Great cities like Camden, Newark were once home to innovators in semiconductor production. The CHIPS Act will bring manufacturing back to New Jersey by hiring physicists, chemists, and electrical engineers who will develop great products for decades in the electronics industry for future growth. Lastly, and sometimes overlooked, is our reliance on foreign semiconductor chip manufacturers whose products we rely on for our national security and safety. Our national security and global war on information technology safety must ride on the back of American semiconductor production. Without a sound foundation of predictable production and engineering, we put ourselves in danger, both economically and as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Beth, are you going to say a few words? Beth Ann Rooney, the Port Director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey.
Just to put a little context here into the port, as the Senator said, the Port of New York and New Jersey is the third largest port in the United States, the largest on the U.S. East Coast, handling last year just shy of 9 million TEUs, 20-foot equivalent units, valued at over $232 billion. Last month, however, we were the second largest import port in the United States, just 1,000 units shy of taking the lead for the largest import businesses, not just container shipping, automobile processing, bulk and break bulk commodities like salt and Belgian black, and behind us we have edible oils and orange juice concentrate, warehousing and distribution, intermodal rail, and numerous other maritime support industries. The port continues to experience record volumes due to COVID-related supply chain impacts. Among those, higher consumer demand, us, people, buying more stuff than what we were spending on services, although this is finally being tempered a bit by the inflation. We have shippers restocking in their inventory, shippers moving higher volumes of cargo just in case that global production shuts down, and shippers pre-ordering goods much earlier than their seasonal norm. At this time, we're handling cargo that typically would also move over the West Coast ports. Due to heavy congestion and delays at the West Coast late last year, coupled with concerns over potential labor disruptions there now, shippers have opted to shift some of their volume to New York and New Jersey and other East and Gulf Coast ports. 70% of the growth that we have experienced through June this year is cargo that has been rerouted from the West Coast. Through June, the port has handled 4.9 million TEUs, with June being the second busiest month of cargo activity ever at the port. But year to date, our volume is up 11.4% over last year, and a staggering 34% more than the same period prior to the pandemic. This extraordinary cargo volume is unprecedented in impact and scope. It has tested the resolve of the Port of New York and New Jersey and continues to be a challenge. But the mission to keep our port facilities fully operational and fluid remains the same. The Port Authority has taken a leadership role in providing collaborative oversight throughout the gateway to continue facilitating the transport of cargo in a timely and efficient manner. We continue to work closely with our marine terminal operators, ocean carriers, partners in trucking and rail, and various logistics industries to identify additional capacity, to establish initiatives to improve fluidity, and to improve the trucker experience. None of this would be possible without the hardworking men and women of the International Longshoremen's Association and the drayage truck drivers, who have not missed a single day since the beginning of the pandemic and have been on the front lines of continuing to keep commerce moving. And I can say that I look forward also to the day that not only have we built resiliency within our chip manufacturing within the United States, but I look forward to the day in which we will then be able to export U.S. manufactured goods manufactured in New Jersey, right here from the Port of New York and New Jersey. And Senator, as always, we appreciate your support for everything that you do in Washington, and particularly on that upcoming water legislation to keep the channels even further. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ben. The Waters and Water Resources Development Act that's going to be passing through has some very significant money for the port. Thanks for bringing it all together. And let me acknowledge the longshoremen. You know, all these ships, Panama, Tokyo, wherever they come from, at the end of the day, they don't get the supplies, don't get efficiently to their destination, whether that be a business, a consumer, or other, without the longshoremen, who are an exceptional group of people. And this particular port have been very forward-looking about how you work with the Port Authority to maximize the potential. So I want to recognize the longshoremen for their incredible work. Finally, Ray Sardetto, Senior Vice President of Communications, New Jersey Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, everybody. Here on behalf of the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce and our 1,200 member companies to gladly support this legislation. We join with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and many businesses that have also done so. when we talk to our member companies, to us, it's always about innovation. And innovation is usually broken down into two parts of the equation: vision and smart investment. And we believe this legislation is both. That's one of the reasons we support it. Innovation and leadership in innovation is crucial to this state as it is to the nation. It's innovation that brings about economic growth. It's innovation that brings job creation. And it also brings about one other thing that's very tangible but not always readily noticeable, and that's that leadership begets more leadership. So this state has a reputation and a history, a deep and rich history of innovation that goes back almost to its founding. We've had the greatest innovators in the world come to live and work here: Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, Dr. Selma Waxman, the father of antibiotics, Beatrice Hicks, who was the first woman hired by Western Electric as an engineer. She became a builder of buildings. Or Erna Hoover Schneider, first physicist hired by Bell Labs here in New Jersey. She got one of the first patents in this new category they call software. And it was her software patent that allowed us to modernize the telephone network. So when you think of these prestigious people that have been here, and you remember that people came here because these people were here, because we were leaders here, who would not have jumped at the chance to have a teaching session with Einstein, or to go to West Orange and learn from Edison in his labs there, or collaborate with Dr. Waxman, or Erna Hoover, or Beatrice Hicks, or any of the thousands of innovators we've had in this state. The state needs to be a leader in the very vital industry of semiconductors, and we think this legislation is a good step in that direction. So anything we can do, any decision we make, any action we take, that moves us towards more innovation and more leadership in innovation is good for the state. So thank you for the time to say this, and we are glad again to support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Martin state because of what we make, the invention state because of what we create. Questions from the press, if there are any. If not, thank you all for coming, and thanks to the Port Authority for holding the rain away. Thank you.